This is Nevertheless with Asad Rahim Khan. We're going to be discussing caretaker governments, how they are completely unique to Pakistan's constitutional setup, and why we have unelected persons take over every few years to usher in an elected government. Now, to be sure, the constitutions of 1956 and 1962, even the current constitution of 1973 in its original draft did not have any legislative space for caretakers. In fact, the outgoing Prime Minister was to remain in charge until the newly elected PM could assume his responsibilities and take over from him. This school of thought started showing up after the widespread rigging of the elections of 1977, after Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was overthrown in the same year by General Zia. It was a General Zia era amendment, the revival of Constitution Order of 1985, which was then endorsed by his National Assembly again in 1985, which brought in caretakers for the first time. The idea was that non-partisan, politically impartial people could actually safeguard the democratic process and ensure a free and fair elections. We of course saw later, whether that was 1990, 2002 or very many other polls, that a caretaker government did not ensure that outcome. In fact, throughout the 90s, we saw that caretakers were often chosen for their opposition to the outgoing political party, besides also being a weapon in the hands of a very empowered president. So to circle back to the 1985 order, it was again after General Zia sacked Mohammad Khan Junejo that a caretaker dispensation came to fore for the first time. Interestingly, certain chief ministers were retained, whereas while provincial governments were sent home, or other provincial assemblies were sent home, particular CMs were kept. And this was the start of an experiment wherein caretakers were usually meant to ensure the right outcome rather than a fair outcome in future dispensations. As the 90s wore on, we saw that not only were caretaker governments very much empowered, Malik Miraj Khalid Saab's government is one such example, but also that the iron fist behind such caretaker dispensations often came from the presidency. The president used to be empowered under Article 58(2)(b) to send the assemblies home, and then would configure a caretaker dispensation supported by the establishment to bring in persons that were considered the right people in subsequent elections. We saw with the 18th Amendment many years later in 2010 an attempt to cure the system. So while caretakers were formally enshrined in the Constitution, the 18th Amendment also made sure that the President's powers were clipped. The President's power to dismiss the assemblies was removed under Article 58(2)(b), and it was again reasserted that the caretaker's function is to ensure free and fair elections within 90 days, no more and no less. So when all of these electoral laws were consolidated in 2017 in the Election Act, we saw that the caretaker's functions were restricted. They could not interfere in major policy decisions. They could not take any major policy decisions. They could not do any postings or transfers. They could only deal with the day-to-day business of the government. And again, their principal function was to aid the Election Commission of Pakistan in ensuring that elections were free and fair. Now, where Pakistan has now gone into different territory is with the amendments made by the outgoing PDM government to these very provisions in the Election Act. The PDM government, while facing criticism that these amendments were not discussed adequately in Parliament and admitting that much of the discussion had happened on WhatsApp groups, amended the Election Act of 2017 to say that caretaker dispensations can now take major policy decisions to the extent of those decisions that have been taken under the laws of the Privatization Commission Ordinance, the Intergovernmental Commercial Transactions Act, and the Public-Private Partnership Authority Act.
PI wish to move that bill further to amend the Election Act 2017, the Election Amendment Bill 2023 be passed.
Now I put the motion to the House. All those in favor of the motion may say aye. All those against it may say no. I think the ayes have it. The motion is adopted and consequently the bill is passed.
So we have seen that the caretaker government's ambit has actually broadened beyond its initial scope. Why this is difficult to comprehend is because we have seen in the past that every time Pakistan deviates from the red line of 90 days in terms of a new election taking place, that has only led to an erosion of Pakistan's parliamentary system and a weakening of its institutions, what to say of the democratic order being put in jeopardy. So it's hoped that while this current caretaker dispensation does make the right noises about being there only for a short period of time, or rather a temporary period of time, it would be in the fitness of things for people to keep reminding the caretaker government that its mandate, being unelected as it is only to ensure free and fair elections within 90 days, and that the elected representatives of the people cannot be substituted by unelected technocrats. This school of thought has affected governance, affected our place as a constitutional system, and also jeopardized our future as a parliamentary democracy. So not only were the PDM government's outgoing amendments damaging to the new parliamentary, to the restoration of parliamentary order brought on by the 18th Amendment, they have also foretold consequences that the current caretaker government would be well served by not following and sticking to the constitutional mandate of elections within 90 days. So far, the record of previous caretaker dispensations has not been much to write home about, but after the serious blow that Pakistan's parliamentary system and Pakistan's structure as a federation was dealt when the state refused to hold elections within 90 days in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it becomes all the more imperative for the caretakers at the center to abide by the constitutional mandates and ensure a peaceful transfer of power within the prescribed limit given in our constitution. So this was Nevertheless by Asad Rahim Khan. This was Nevertheless. Hope to see you soon.